Hi guys, Graham from Penguin here on the dyno with the crossflow. Just because I can, I thought before we get into it, I'll just do a cold start on it. This last ran yesterday, so it is stone cold now. Ambient air temperature. To be honest, this engine's actually finished, but the fuel pump that was supplied to go with the engine packed up. So part of the way through dyno testing it, I switched to the dyno's electric pump. I've now put the mechanical pump back in, and I just want to run it up and check that all is well. But I thought first I'd give it a cold start, because I know some of you have trouble starting engines on DCOEs cold. There's no real reason why it should be an issue to start cold, but you know, it can happen. So what I'll do, do a cold start first, which a couple of long but slow prods of the throttle. On in hit start button, and she should fire right up. Right. I haven't got the main feed pipe running, but I've got the scavenge pump running, and gravity is feeding the dyno with water. That's enough for me to start it up, but maybe not do power runs. So here goes. 1, 2, 3. 3 prods on the pedal. Let's hit the key. Right. 900 RPM idle. What more can you want? Right, she's running. What we do now, just gonna put it under load for a little bit, let it warm up, just do a couple of pulls, just to make sure the new mechanical pump isn't starving it of fuel at high RPM. Right, I don't know if you can hear inside the extractors, I might have to voice this over, but we've got the engine running, and I've got the main operating page of the Your Dyno software open here. There are other gauges I can put up. I can put EGTs, I can put up air temperature if I want. Pretty much as many things I can measure I can put on here, but I like to keep it fairly simple. So, torque, that's obvious. RPM, that's obvious. Power, yeah, that's obvious. AFR, the engine's ticking over at the moment. It's an old crossflow. I like to be fairly rich, so 12s. In here we've got water in, and that's basically the water exiting the cooling tower, or if you want it, basically the bottom of the radiator. Engine oil temperature, oil pressure, coolant temperature, which is the coolant exiting the engine. Now this probe is actually located in a hose off the engine, so true engine coolant temperature will be a little bit higher than this. That's the position of the brake on the servo that controls the dyno, and that's the temperature in the dyno room in Fahrenheit. So to do a run, I've already set up the dyno software, so all I've got to do is load the throttle up. The dyno will hold it around about 2000 RPM. There we go, 2000 RPM, AFR stabilised, engine settled, click go. And oops, I've actually given away the power output. There we go. That's the dyno run done. I'll save this. I can then go over here, screen. There's the power run of it, and the last 3 I did. And if I drag this up here, that's the AFR curves from those runs. Right, I thought I'd get you in here to explain the AFR graph. Now, to some of you, this looks wild and wacky. It's not. Trust me, and I'll explain why it's not. For a start, it's on carburetors, and given the relatively limited adjustability you've got with a carburetor compared to fuel injection, you're unlikely to get a flat line. Obviously, injection, you've got a finer control, so you will get it flatter. But it looks like a really squiggly line, but basically that is down to scale. Because that's 12 to 1 down there. And that's 14.5 up there. So that's only range of 2.5. If we were to plot this on a power graph, which will go up there, down there, round there, that would be a flat line at the bottom. So anyway, so what we got the load in there. It's about 13.2. As the engine picks up, it richens up, and that's most likely the engine collecting some of the surplus fuel that's hanging around. We go on a bit. As it comes up, it leans itself out around here. So we're getting 13.8 there. Richens up more like there, 13.4. Back again. Let's say on a carburetor, there's no way we could flatline that. Fuel injection we could, but on carburetor we can't. And then at the very end, we're at like 12.8. So that's actually pretty good. Now, these peaks here, I did tickle with the jetting to see if I could richen it up a bit there, and to be honest, it didn't want it. It was quite happy. So we found our happy spot. There's our AFR graph. So I've showed you I'm doing this all kind of backwards because I've now showed you the end of it. So perhaps I'll show you some of the stages as to how we got to where we are. So how did we get here? Well, basically, this was a bit of a rush job. So client bought me a bottom end. They bought me a Vulcan cylinder head. I'm not sure when this Vulcan head was done. It hasn't done a lot of use, but they brought me a cylinder head, pair of carbs, and said, give me 110 to 120 brake horsepower. It's going in a Marcus. Its driver is 85 years old. Whoa. So there we go. There's our power goal, 110 to 120 brake horsepower. I figured that was fairly easy to achieve. I also figured because of the age of the gentleman that's going to drive it, I would concentrate more on making it as tractable and drivable as possible rather than shooting for big horsepower numbers. So other than a few bits that came pre-supplied, I went shopping with Burtons, and they supplied me a set of 110 thou oversized pistons, which you would use to reclaim an engine that's already been bored to 1700 and has got warm bores. So we've got a set of 110 oversized hepolite pistons, cam kit. The cam is a 224, so high torque profile, although high torque in a crossflow is not the same as high torque in anything else, because crossflows don't really do torque. So, but high torque cam to maximise the drivability, because we're not shooting for big horsepower numbers. Okay. Pair of 40 DCOEs and a manifold. I stripped the DCOEs, cleaned them with the ultrasonics. Right, so as supplied, the carbs came with really short ram pipes, which I initially ran the engine up on, and huge 34mm chokes. Well, I took the 34 chokes out and substituted some 30s. And I can all hear some of you now going, well, that's never going to make any power. It will, trust me. And the reason for the 30mm chokes is that I felt, given the target power, 110 to 120 horsepower, and the age of the driver, and the fact it wasn't going to be a competition car, I felt that the smaller the choke size I went, the better we could maximise torque and flexibility and drivability with no real loss of top end power. So 30mm chokes. I had to considerably change the jet setting from what the carbs came with, bear in mind the original 34s. In the end, I hazard a guess, I selected some 120 mains with 175 airs. The tubes are the same F16s, and I left in the 45 F9 idles with a 40 pump. Yeah, and I initially ran it up like that. Fairly soon I switched out the idles for 50 F9s because I needed to richen it up low down, and I felt from the response it needed bigger pump jets, so I put some 45s in it. So that's the carburetors. Distributor, I don't really know anything about it. It is modified. It came with the engine, lumination kit. I just fitted and ran it. And I said the cylinder head earlier is from Vulcan. It looks to have some pretty big valves in it. Don't know too much about it. Just cleaned it. Gave it a quick lick in the head facing machine. Make sure it's truly flat. And fitted it. So I think we're, with the 110 oversized pistons, we're a fraction over 1700cc. But at this kind of power level, 1020cc is so negligible in power output, it's not really worth the consideration. But that's basically it. So let's get you an early dyno run up. On the early runs, we ran it with just 26 degrees ignition valance, because what I like to do, I like to creep up on it and get it bedded in and load it up gently and do the early running with a fairly conservative timing setting to make sure we don't hurt anything when it's at its most vulnerable. No. Right, so there you go, guys. That's our first power run. Only 26 degrees ignition advance, 118 pound-foot, 115 horsepower, target horsepower, 110, 120, job done. Go home. Yeah? Not quite. So what I did next is I tried to play with the timing a little, and I settled on 30 degrees in advance. And what did 30 do? Well, 30's in the yellow, so we gained a little bit, not so much there, and not so much there, but basically we gained a little bit right through the rev range. We now hit 120 pound-foot torque and 118 brake horsepower. To be honest, I didn't try any more advance, because when you look there and there, the gain from the extra timing is small, so we risk in trying to find more everywhere else. We risk over advancing it, and I don't want to. We're already more than making our power goal. So there you go, 30 degrees advance on 30mm chokes. Now at some stage I did switch out to 180 airs just to lean the air fuel ratio off a bit at the top. But if you're watching the video, you'd have seen that we've got a fair bit of standoff. So I thought, well, next up we'll try some different ram pipe lengths. Yeah, I didn't change the ram pipes for anything to do with power, but with all the standoff you could see, I figured that it's perhaps we might see a bit more power. And certainly if we can keep the fuel in the engine as opposed to already outside of it, with less chance of something going wrong. So yeah, we initially switched out the very short ram pipes for some 39s and then some 55s. As it happens, the power difference between the 55s and the 39s was marginal. There's very little difference. In fact, it's slightly like that. Now, I can hear some of you saying, ah, yeah, but long and short, you know, short top end power, long. If you think in those terms, you're right and you're wrong. This is a short intake. A long intake would be like that on a modern production injected engine, when I curve the intake rounds and get real long intakes in. So whether this has got a 16mm ram pipe, a 39mm ram pipe, 55 or a 60, it's still a short intake. But within any intake length, you can fine tune it a little and rock it around. But let's say whether you've got a long or short intake is not determined by that. It's the whole lot. So let's do another couple of power runs now with some different length. Right, there you go. 39 versus 55mm trumpets. There's a bit of a sine wave thing going on. Is one really much better than the other? No, not a lot. As with any engine dyno run, it varies slightly from run to run. But on average, I'd have said the 39s had the upper hand. Fuel standoff wise, there wasn't really any difference between the 39s and the 55s, but the 39s certainly reduced the standoff compared to the very short 16mm trumpets. So that is how we're going to leave it for now. Right, at this point I'm actually editing the final video, and I've just realised I haven't given some definitive power output numbers. Basically, on the short 16mm ram pipes, most runs it was doing 118, 119 brake horsepower and about 118 pound-foot torque. On the 39mm ram pipes, it picked the power up slightly. Most runs 120 brake horsepower, and torque is more like 122. So those are the numbers we're going with: 120 brake horsepower, 122 pound-foot. Right, back to the video. Guess there's one other thing I could do, because it wouldn't be a video without a comparison. So let me stick my Dyno Mule crossflow up and see how that compares. Now, my Dyno Mule, when that's on 40s, has got 33mm carbs chokes. So the only real difference between this engine and my Dyno Mule, other than the fact that my Dyno Mule's now done a lot of running, is my Dyno Mule has a Burton big valve head, whereas this engine's got a Vulcan head, and my Dyno Mule runs a BCF2 cam. Obviously this has got a 224, and I say this has got small 30mm chokes, and mine has normally got 32s or 33s in it. The last run I'm going to put up is 33s. Without doubt, the AFR curve and probably the torque curve will be slightly flatter if I'd have put some 32s in it, but it's an interesting comparison nonetheless. So there you go. In green is my engine, with its BCF2 and its bigger chokes. Well, the only advantage my engine's got is right at the top. So basically 5800 RPM upwards, mine's a bit better, but below like 54, there's no way you trade that bit at the top for that there. And look how it comes on so much sooner. Oh, the power that mine's making at 3000 RPM, this one's doing 2.5 or even less. So I think with the mild cam and the small chokes, I think we've got our cake and we've vet it there. And on that bombshell, you know what to do. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, and I'll catch you on the flip side. See you later, guys.